This talk is about what I experienced. If I do realise each one of us was a small cog in a very large wheel. At times we were apt to think we was the only cog. But what it did bring out was true comradeship, humour mingled with fear. Humour. Please try and imagine we had just landed, run across beach into a narrow lane, with ditches on both sides, when all the hell let loose. The Germans had disarmed some Italians and sent them scurrying towards us. Jerry then lay a very heavy barrage down. Both us and the Italians dived into the ditches. This is the humour. A bit of a comedian in our sections remarks, in a stuttering voice, "Don't let the Yaitais see us shaking, they'll take up arms again." A good soldier, name of Tom Sayers from Grimsby. By nightfall we got dug in a citrus grove, but no one seemed to know where the enemy was. This was where I encountered my first setback. We had a password and was ordered to keep on full alert. As we knelt in our slit trench, a figure loomed between the trees to the front. I was a brain gunner, but took my number 2's rifle. Just loud enough I called the password. No answer. He dodged behind another tree. He again showed himself. This time I fired. Hit him in the arm. I now knew who he was. Germans don't swear in English. He was my own platoon sergeant. He later explained how it was his own fault. He was lost and forgot the password. Possibly I did him a favour. He got his ticket. The next heading is fear. Several encounters with the enemy before the big push on the 23rd of September. Dog company, my company, objective was Costa Piano. In Salerno Cemetery there lies numerous Lincolns from this fatal day. Also there were scores of wounded. I've listed this chapter as fear because when you see the wounded around you, I wondered if it happens to me, shall I show fear? I was soon to find out. As we ran forward into a hail of machine gun fire, I felt my toe trip a wire. Yes, the dreaded mines. The brain gun I carried smashed to bits, my legs shattered with shrapnel. It all had gone quiet, but the noise of battle came back. I must have passed out. I then began to wonder about my number 2. He was an Horncastle lad. His wife came from my hometown. I knew her well. I'm afraid he fared worse than I. He was killed. It was the next day before we were stretched out those hills. Eventually onto a ship in Salerno Bay and back to Bourne in North Africa, where I had 2 operations taking shrapnel out. I was then transferred to a general hospital just outside Algiers. Was told I was put on the list. I was put on the list for going home. After several weeks went by, they came and told me how lucky I was. My wounds were healing lovely. I was took off that list. I call that unlucky. So I now requested to be sent back to my own battalion. After going through the usual channels, convalescing, transit camps, I joined the battalion to go to the Middle East for more training and replenishing our losses. We then returned to Italy to go up for the Gothic line. On August the 26th, I believe our battle started. We then witnessed heavy fighting until the 11th of December. On the 8th of December, I again got wounded, this time by an 88 shell fired from a Tiger tank. I was now a section leader, a corporal. Why I mention my rank? Before this action took place, at a place called Forley, we was again receiving reinforcements. One chap was sent to my section. His name was Goddard, the same name as myself. Where he was a private, I was his corporal. We hit it off from the start. He stuck to me like my shadow, much to his loss. We had just took this farm when a Tiger tank paid us a visit. As we scurried for cover, he let go with his 88. The shell exploded in the middle of my section, killing young Goddard and wounding the rest of us. Why I mention him being a private and me a corporal, years later I visited Forley Cemetery. On his gravestone, it's Lance Corporal Goddard. On the notification my parents got from the War Office saying I'd been wounded was Private Goddard. By the time this action took place, I was a full corporal, so mistakes are made. Several of us wounded was able to crawl back. We landed up at the forward dressing station. This time for me it was shrapnel in the same leg plus the left elbow. We had our wounds dressed, but the medics had to get out as the position was being overrun. A sergeant who had not been hit stayed back with us and gave a running commentary on what was happening. It was there that Captain Brunt won his VC. Because of his bravery, it enabled the stretcher bearers to get us out that night. I'm afraid Captain Brunt was killed the next day with a mortar bomb. I would like to pay tribute to my namesake, Private Goddard, but I think it most fitting for him to keep what it says on his gravestone, Lance Corporal. He certainly deserves that little honour. I have since checked with the Graves Commission and discovered he was 20 years of age, he had no next of kin, he had no one to feel proud of him. I didn't have the pleasure of knowing him long. What I did know was first class. I feel humble but proud to share his name. Can I please quote a few passages from Douglas Orgill's book, The Gothic Line. Along the line to the north, the main heights along the Germano Ridge were still in enemy hands. All around the bullet-chipped cross on point 449, the dead khaki and field grey lay, heaped unburied, in score upon score. At their centre a soldier of the Lincolns, whose hands were still frozen in death around the cross itself, which he had reached in the battalion's first attack. Another passage quotes Major General Whitfield of the 56th Division describing it the dirtiest battleground he saw during the war. Also quoted senior officers who had served in both wars saying, the gruesome landscape was one of the few in the war which recalled scenes of Flanders in the 1914-18 war. The whole area was being continually pounded by artillery from both sides. The dead who lay around in hundreds were being blown to pieces by the ceaseless rain of shells. Why I wanted to read these passages. We were supposed to be the D-Day Dodgers. I think we did our share. After a month or two in the 57th General Hospital, southern Italy, I once more requested to be sent back to my unit, who had by this time returned from Greece. We once more moved north to engage the enemy, but had the good news of discovering it was all over in Italy, and finally the whole collapse of the German army. We finished up in Austria as a victorious army, complete with medal ribbons and wound stripes. We was known as the Army of the Red X, because that was our battle cap badge. Each one of you must have been proud of your own units. I was of mine. If you'll notice in my talk, I addressed my unit as the 6th Battalion Lincolnshire Regiment, but after the war we was given the title and honour of the Royal Lincolnshire Regiment, because of battle honours won. In a small way, I would like to think I attributed towards this. Thank you for listening. I hope now I can be a listener to your stories. May I just pay tribute to all my pals, and your comrades who gave their short lives to allow us to have a full one. Thank you.
Very good, Bill. Do you want to add anything?
There was a lot of young lives lost.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
there was all your mates. Everybody in the army witnessed what I've just said.
That's right.
That's it. You want to learn, but it's a long while ago. Don't let us ever forget it.
No.